The Fantasmagorium is proud to present Money, Murder, and Minnesota, a retrospective of all things Fargo. And here we are again, another beginning. My stars. We got a Culkin, a Danson, golly, a Dunst. And there's a Plemons. From what I understand, they had relations. Let's see where this takes us. I was rather taken by a Milligan. The award-winning Coen Brothers executive produced and Noah Hawley run FX series of Fargo is what we are here for. So let's go. Kat is here. I am Scotty R37, and Steve is a shoe in a tree. How you doing, Kat?
Good.
This is your favorite of
No, I think
all
this
of
is
the
the
seasons.
no. This is the best season, but it's not my season 3 is my favorite.
Okay,
This is the best season, but season 3 is my favorite.
but this is the one that everyone has been. This is the one that I've been looking forward to the most, simply because it has such a stellar cast, and I think that upon watching these 2 episodes of the second season, this is building upon the first season very much so. It's a flashback. We have what's Molly's dad's last name? Silverson?
Solverson.
Like it is a direct follow-up to the first season. Yes?
Okay.
Don't you think? With all these characters?
Follow-up just because the characters are, some of them are there, but yeah. The season
I would say
has nothing to do with it in terms of plot, or story.
Well, it's kind of a prequel.
Only insofar that some of the characters were there, but that's it.
Okay.
Because the prequel usually has to do something to do with the story or the plot, and it really has nothing to do with the events of season 1 or Malvo or any of that stuff.
Although there is a nice callback. Do you want to build a snowman? Yes. What do you want to call him? Billy Bob. I thought that was cute. That was fun. And that's in the second episode. But I do with Mike Milligan. This is I think going to be a detriment to my opinion of Fargo in the order in which we have watched it. Because if you do watch this show in order, it builds on a subsequent manner. You have things revealed to you. I always thought that these were disassociated, but watching this season, or at least season 2 in the first 2 episodes, it's like, okay, a lot of this sort of expands to everything that I've seen so far.
Mm-hmm.
And so, do you think that there is a value of watching these seasons in order?
Well, like what, release order or chronological order?
Release order.
No, because some of the callback or whatever, it's like, okay. Or others, it's like, whatever. Like when I watched season 2 and they said it was going to be, Lou Solverson is one of your main characters, I was like, okay. But it didn't, and then, of course, as they kept saying multiple times throughout season 1, the Sioux Falls incident, this is Sioux Falls all over again. So that's, of course, coming. But other than that, I mean, the story and the plot and everything is really different. So I don't think it would really make that much of a difference, even if you saw it originally chronologically, season 2 and then season 1. Yeah, there is some connective tissue there, but for the most part, it's still faithful to what you'd consider an anthology series, and that you don't need to see the other season to know what's going on, or vice versa, even though there's crossover.
Well, I don't think that you...
Like season 4, for example, you don't need to see... Like, yeah, Mike Milligan is in season 4, but that season is specifically designed that you can't watch it in chronological order, because at the end of the season, it jumps ahead to 1979 to show, Bokeem Woodbine as Mike Milligan in the car, which is going to be meaningless if you're watching it in chronological order for the first time, because it's like, okay, so he's older now. Who are those guys driving the car? Where are they going? Only if you've seen season 2 does that final reference really, make any sense. So.
Well, and it's interesting that you bring that up, because that post-credits sequence with Mike Milligan, never saw it. I never saw it.
We talked about it, though, right?
We did talk about it, but it was in direct relation to something that you had already seen. Like, I wasn't familiar with his participation in season 2. And so I was like, I don't know. So,
yeah, and even watching it now, since of course I've seen season 4 for the first time with you, I don't feel like knowing Mike's backstory really influences much on what we'll see this season. It's like, okay, so that's Mike Milligan. It's like, okay, that's where Mike Milligan came from. Okay, it's like it didn't. I think you'll judge for yourself as we watch. But
I suppose.
But because, like I mentioned, they like I often told you during the season 4 review that it's like a lesser show, because it's like we're doing the mob war again, except this time it's more, this is like corporate versus a family, but season 4 was just doing it worse. And it's like, okay, so Mike's back. It's like, okay, so Mike's here, but I was curious as to how they were going to tie that in, because I knew from the beginning of season 4 when they mentioned the Milligan family, I'm like, okay, that's going to be tied in somehow, but I didn't know how. Like, even watching all of season 4, I wasn't sure how it was going to connect, and it wasn't until the Kansas episode that I figured it out. Oh, okay, he's going to be Mike Milligan. Spoilers for season 4, but it's like,
spoilers for everything, yo.
Yeah. So seeing it, it's like, because they still don't explain, and will never explain, how did Mike go from being, what happened to his father at the end of season 4 to him suddenly working for this mob. Because we saw at the end of season 4, the Italians won the mob war. They took over. As we can see already from these first 2 episodes, this Kansas City syndicate is not a family. And you can see who's running it. Adam Arkin playing the head honcho in the back. And it's like,
it was Adam Arkin. Okay.
Yeah, and like, okay, none of them are Italian. So it's like, what happened to the Italians? And how does Mike look at, like, we don't know. And I don't know if they intend to tell another story to connect the dots or to connect that, but as of now, we don't know. And they're not going to tell you in season 2 how Mike came to work for them, because at the time they wrote season 2, they didn't know they were going to be doing, season 4 as this, Mike Milligan origin story.
It would have been interesting to sort of have that revelation of Mike Milligan. If I had watched it chronologically in terms of release,
right,
I think it would have been sort of a revelation at the end of season 4, where I would have been like, oh. And there are echoes, in my opinion, of season 2 and season 4. And I do appreciate it. Like, I appreciate it encapsulates things. Like, I'm not knocking it. What I'm saying, if I had watched it in order, it would have built on things that I had seen previously. However, watching it in the fakakta way that we watched it, I'm still enjoying it, but I'm thinking of Mary Elizabeth Winstead's character in season 3. Yeah. And like, immediately I'm seeing Kirsten Dunst. I'm like, same character, but different.
I don't know about that.
Same trope.
Really? Because
I am, yeah.
Well, because Nikki Swango is a very independent, capable, intelligent person, and who's able to finagle her way just about out of anything. Compared to Peggy, a married housewife who has dreams of moving to California for this self-actualization, who as we'll discuss how she reacts to adversity. Like we say, what is one of the staples of Fargo? It's simple people either doing something illegal that they think is going to be really simple or doing something really stupid that snowballs. And we've seen what her really stupid decision is that is going to snowball. So I don't see, whereas Nikki didn't really, it's like, yeah, because when Nikki's big decision that she made in the beginning of season 3 was deciding to kill Maurice LeFay with the air conditioner unit, but that didn't really blow up in her face. It's like, yeah, Gloria suspected it, but it didn't really, that's not why Nikki met her demise. Like, she got out of it, you know, that didn't really snowball for her. That was, that was all the, Varga and all the other stuff. Whereas Peggy, you can already see how from these first 2 episodes, as we'll discuss, what problems are potentially going to arise from the decision that she's made. And I just don't picture that if Nikki were in the same situation that she would have made the decisions that Peggy made. I think Nikki would be able to get herself out of that.
Yeah, no, Nikki would have been a much smarter, hot girl. But before we get into, which I'm assuming we're all champing at the bit to get into, the plot of these opening episodes, I do want to say hello to Lemon Pie, who says
Aces.
That's right. Lemon goes on to say, who is ready for the strangest season of Everybody Loves Raymond? I do. What's his name? Brad Garrett? I was so happy to see him. Yes. But also, it could be one of the strangest episodes of, what's the Parks and Recreation. But I do appreciate it. Tim. Hello, Tim. Are we Raylos? Kat, are we Raylos?
I admit that Ray and Kylo have chemistry because Daisy Ridley and Adam Driver had chemistry, but I am not somebody who wanted those characters to get together just because the actors had chemistry.
It's like back anyway. I enjoy both of those actors. Lemon Pie says Fakakta. Scotty plus Yiddish equals awesome. Yes. I am a person who is supportive of the Hebrew. So, Kat, what happens in the beginning of this season?
Fargo, season 2 tells you exactly what the whole season is going to be about. When we begin with the old school MGM logo from black and white logo from 70s. Or actually,
so
I think
rad.
Older than the 70s, actually. It looks like, because I think they were already using the color logo by then. But the episode is called Waiting for Dutch, which is a literal translation, as we see in the opening scene, as well as a figurative translation for what the entire season is ultimately about. And so we open up on this battlefield for a film set. And there's this actor from New Jersey who's dressed up in moccasins and a headdress and war paint. And there's all these dead cavalrymen and wagon trains. And the director shows up and he's like, or the assistant director shows up. He's like, it's going to be a few minutes. We're waiting for Dutch to get to finish getting ready. And he's like, and the actor says, well, so what's he like? Who, Reagan, what's he like? Oh, yeah, but so. And then the assistant director kind of casually mentions that this is the same battlefield where the actual battle took place. And he's like, oh, yeah, your people probably, yeah, you guys know about this. He's like, what do you mean? It's like, well, you're Native American. It's like, I'm from New Jersey. Well, yeah, but there's got to be some type of connect. And it's like, oh, geez, here we go already. And and so it's like literally this actor who's just getting annoyed waiting on Ronald Reagan to come out of his trailer while the other actors playing the dead cavalrymen are asking for blankets because it's cold. And even the assistant director wants him to hurry up because it's just taking, he's taking too long. And so on the one hand, you have 2 completely different meanings to this title. That one hand, they're waiting impatiently for Reagan to show up on set. But figuratively, from everything that this season is going to be about, it's about waiting on the Reagan era because this is supposed to be 1979. Mm-hmm. And we've already seen plenty of characters through Peggy, through Hansi, and through Mike Milligan, how they each represent different movements in the 70s, and we're going to see how that transpires through their character journeys. And it's like what I love about this season, what a lot of people loved, is like it's a big like a mixer of everything that is 70s United States of America. Like you have Native American Indian movement, you have the Black Power movement, you have the feminist movement, all this kind of stuff, and then the Gerhardt crime family juxtaposed against the threat of corporate Kansas City, i.e. Reaganomics. And it's like you're waiting for and all the cynicism of the time and everybody just wanting something else. And that's kind of what the whole season is ultimately about. And I love how they just put it as literally as they can in the opening scene.
They do introduce the time very, very well. The cinematography of it, in terms of like the sliding, like there's a juxtaposition that happens, but also, it definitely shows you, I hate to go political, but it shows you the weakness and cowering of a Jimmy Carter presidency and the desire for something else to move forward.
100%. That's what the whole season's about. And
great.
And so,
I'm Canadian, so I don't know. I didn't live through this. I don't have this in my brain or my heart, but it's just like, I still feel like, are we agreed that Jimmy Carter was a pussy?
Well, he is kind of a more of a lame duck president with certain policies. He had the energy crisis going on. He wasn't really doing much of anything. And
sure.
A lot of people, and he largely won the election simply because Gerald Ford, his predecessor, decided to pardon Richard Nixon. And that's kind of a big reason why Carter ended up getting, because Ford wasn't really a bad president either. It's just like, it was okay. It's Ford. It's kind of somewhat stable, but then he did that, pardoning Nixon. Everybody was really pissed off about that, and that gave Carter a huge boost in the polls. But then everything was just kind of lame duck, an energy crisis, and all this, and nothing getting done. And part of that was because of his own policies and like, nope, I planted my flag here, and we're doing this or not doing this. Another example would be like the Iran hostage crisis, which got resolved within a week of Reagan assuming office. So it's kind of like this lame duck presidency, but all the cynicism and all the bad economy, everything is just becoming exacerbated to the point that, like you said, people are waiting for something. They need some type of change, and for better or worse, Reagan, that change is coming, and we see obviously the worst aspects of it in terms of Reaganomics, amongst other things from the 80s. But for the most part, it's like everybody's just waiting to get out of this slump that they're in the 70s.
Well, and episode 2 really spoke to me. I'm going to jump all over the place if it's okay. But like episode 2 really spoke to me when it was Mike Milligan talking to Ted Danson's character.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, isn't it nice that two men can talk rationally while everyone around them is losing their mind? The world can be on fire, but as long as two men can speak to one another rationally, it's all going to be okay. And I thought that spoke to me very much. I think that this, in terms of these 2 episodes, it was it like, what year did this came out in? What, 2017?
No, fall 2015, October through December of 2015.
2015, and it speaks as much today in terms of the world's fakakt. Sorry, I'm not going to use Yiddish all the time. I'm not going to go all Hebrew everywhere. But no, it's like the world is crazy, and as long as we can conduct ourselves like men, is Mike Milligan our new Lorne Malvo?
In what way?
I mean, is he the crazy guy?
No, he's the enforcer. But he's also kind of checked out in a way that you could see. Like Milligan-isms, I suppose you would call it, the way he's just like, oh, okay, like when he goes in and talks to the guy with the typewriter, and the way he's like, kids are using phones like this. I'm never one for fun. He's kind of like that. He always tells some type of soliloquy leading up to something really bad that he's going to do, but it's not unlike Malvo, who does it because he's like a sadist, a psychopath who enjoys it. Milligan is just a guy who would prefer to cut to the chase. He has no tolerance for bullshit. And so if somebody gives him the runaround, like, and they walk in and ask for Rye Gerhardt, and they already know damn well that this guy knows who he is. They knew who to go to see about their bit because they've been monitoring the Gerhardt family. They know what type of business they're in. And the fact that the guy's playing stupid immediately, Mike's like, I don't have time for games. And so he's just immediately, he likes to cut to the chase by, telling those little soliloquies or whatever, sitting down and talking about it and then doing something, which is like his way of saying to whoever his intended victim is that, you know what, you had your chance and I'm done. We're not doing that. We're not running circles around this right now. Now, of course, he didn't do anything bad to Solverson Sr. when they pulled him over because there was really no reason to exacerbate anything at the time.
Well, I was skipping ahead.
Right. But in your answer to your question, no, I don't think he's Malvo. He's not a psycho killer who's going on massive killing sprees or anything like that.
So we begin season 2 by discovering the family of what's the name of the family?
Gerhardt.
The Gerhardts. And we get Rye and the other two.
Yeah, there's Rye is the youngest brother. We have Bear, who's the middle brother, played by Angus Sampson. He's great. And he's actually one of easily the most level-headed and intelligent of the three brothers, even though he doesn't act like it very much. And then you have the dumbass eldest son, Dodd. And you can already see exactly what he's all about. Oh, a woman's place is in the kitchen. Oh, you can't possibly know what you're talking about. Dad's the king of everything. I'm going to be the boss, so there's no way. Oh, somebody wants to put us out. We're just going to fight. He doesn't know about business. He's just a total dumbass. And it's like, okay, you can see how he's going to be creating some problems. And then there's and Bear has a son. I forget what his name is. The kid who has the
he's like the son from Breaking Bad. He's got like autism or
no, it's not. I think it's a form of mild cerebral palsy, maybe. And so he's and he's Bear's son, and he's kind of bright. And then there's the sister. The brothers do have a sister. I can't remember her name, and they didn't even mention it. And she's Carol. Kind of blonde, and she's kind of like she's just kind of there. But the two who run the family, there's Otto, and then Floyd. Floyd being played by Gene Smart. And they're talking, Otto's hosting a meeting and he says, we're short on money. And he's like, well, Rye hasn't been, collecting his dues like he should be, like, from racketeering and whatnot. And Floyd says, no, even if you had Rye's 128 that you're supposed to bring in, we're still really short. And Otto's like, yeah, I know. What's the problem then? Why are we bleeding so much money? And Floyd says, we're losing business. And the reason they're losing business is because Kansas City is encroaching on some of the territory or getting close to it. And so Otto, before he can even discuss what they're going to do about this, he suddenly has a massive stroke at the table. And he's incapacitated, and everybody's sending him get well cards. And his grandson goes through one of them. He's like, look, Uncle Joe sent porn. Nudie pics. Meanwhile, at some boardroom out in Kansas City, you have Brad Garrett's character, who's the representative of the crime family, of the Kansas City mob syndicate. You have Adam Arkin sitting in the dark. And Brad Garrett's basically giving the lowdown on their northern expansion. He says the key to doing it is to either buy out the Gerhardt operation. He says they're competent enough that they can still run it day to day, but report to us. Otherwise, well, we just liquidate them then if they don't go along with it. And we see Mike Milligan sitting there in the dark, kind of smoking a cigarette, kind of, he's kind of all cool with it or whatever. It's like, okay, so there's the plan. And so Mike Milligan and the Kitchen brothers, who are two mute assassins, accompany him north. Twins, who accompany him north to go and discuss a buyout option. And meanwhile, Dodd decides that he's, Dodd has on his side Hansi Dent, who's a enforcer, and he listens to whatever Dodd says, does what Dodd tells him to do. And Rye's like, why do I need to keep doing all that? It's like, you're the oldest, Bear's the second oldest, I'm the youngest. I'm never going to be anything. Why should I have to always be picking up your table scraps and shit? And Dodd's like, you're a Gerhardt. Like that means something. But he calls him on it. He's like, so what? It's like, I'm never going to be in charge of anything. I'm just going to be your errand boy for the rest of your life. And Dodd doesn't want to hear that. So it's like, okay. And Rye realizes he's going to have to assert himself. And he's like, no. And he says, you need to go collect collect your racketeers. Go get the money. So he goes to this guy in town who's got gambling debts. He works at a small store, and he shows him what he thinks is going to be the next big thing, a typewriter that self-corrects. like an autocorrecting typewriter, and Rye doesn't really understand it, and he's like, well, what do we need to do to get this working? He's like, well, we need the judge to unfreeze the accounts, and I don't know if that's going to happen or not. And so he's like, don't worry, I'll make it happen. And this is after he scared some guy away by pulling a gun on him because Rye's an idiot. So Rye goes down to the courthouse and he waits. And he doesn't work up the courage to talk to the judge when she leaves the building. So instead he follows her in the car. She pulls over at this place called the Waffle Hut, which is a one-off diner on a country road in the middle of nowhere. And he goes inside and confronts her, and he's talking to her about it. And she's like, son, this isn't going to go your way. I'm not changing my mind about this. And she tells him the story of Job. And she says, after God punished Job and put him through all sorts of hell, even the devil couldn't convince Job to not follow God anymore. It's like, if the devil can't change Job's mind after all the hell he got put through, then what makes you think you're going to change my mind? And Rye, like an idiot, is like, huh, what are you talking about? Because he's too stupid. And then he starts cussing at her. So she whips out a can of pepper spray, which is admittedly an overreaction for sure, sprays him in the eyes, and that's when all hell breaks loose.
Well, once he gets sprayed in the eye with the bug spray, it's not pepper spray, it's bug spray.
Okay, bug spray.
Well, and she does say very specifically, I will squash you like a bug. And then he tries to flex his nuts. And then she sprays. Also, Ann Cusack as the judge. I just had the pleasure of seeing Ann Cusack in Tank Girl. And so that was rad. It's always nice to see Ann Cusack. But yeah, no, she uses the bug spray like pepper spray or mace in Kieran Rye Culkin's eyes. And so what does he do? He pulls a gun and shoots her. And then everyone else around, he shoots them as well. Some more successfully than others.
Yeah, the cook even runs out of the kitchen with a frying pan ready to deck him, and then he gets shot. Must have hit an artery because he's shot like in the back of the shoulder or something, and yet he dies. And then the waitress freaks out and drops the coffee cup, and then he shoots her. And he sees the judge is still alive and shoots her a couple more times. And was it the waitress who stumbles out of the store? Yeah, so he figures everybody's down and out for the count, so he's tending to his eyes, and he turns and sees that the waitress has escaped. So he goes outside, walks across the street, shoots her dead after having a problem getting the gun to reload, or it jammed or whatever.
And then what happens?
We see what might be a flying saucer or maybe a military drone or something shining these lights in the woods. It's the 70s. Ufology was really big back then, so they're throwing everything. Everything's getting thrown into the blender for this season. And he sees that, and he's kind of perplexed. He's getting closer, and then all of a sudden, he gets hit by a car, crashing into the windshield. The car slams the brakes because he went flying halfway through the windshield. I'm not sure how the driver didn't see him, but okay. And the car is slammed on the brakes, and we don't see who the driver is at first. And
she was checking her makeup in the rear view mirror.
Oh, that's right. So, and then she just starts the engine and just drives on with him just sticking out of. And it's like, okay, I can get people sometimes freaking out when something like that happens and they'll have the freeze response. But to then actually just drive home and park the car in the garage like everything's fine. And this is, of course, Kirsten Dunst's character. She's a hairdresser in town, and her husband is Jesse Plemons, who is, of course, they met on the set of this show, and they got married in real life, had kids. And Jesse.
By the way, if you're an actor and you want to get married, get cast on Fargo.
Yes.
Because apparently that's where you're going to find your true love. Now, I do want to take a brief moment.
Yeah.
Kirsten Dunst has always been one of my favorite actresses ever since she was cast as Mary Jane Watson. I do have a crush. I will forgive everything in the same way that I forgive Mary Elizabeth Winstead, because Mary Jane Watson and Ramona Flowers, they are in the same class as far as I'm concerned. So I will forgive. I think that I don't like Peggy at all as a character. I think that she is coasting on her looks and taking advantage of Jesse Plemons' character, Roy. Roy?
Ed.
Who?
Ed Blomquist.
Ed Blomquist.
Yes.
I think that she's taking advantage of Ed in a way that I do not think that Mary Elizabeth Winstead was taking advantage of Obi-Wan Kenobi.
I don't think she's taking advantage so much as she's clearly ditzy, and I think she just caught up.
I don't think she's ditzy.
I think she kind of had an affair or whatever, and she got caught up in the whole fantasy of marriage. They got married, and then what do you know? Married life isn't exciting as you think. So she has this dream to move to California and is getting obsessed with these old self-help gurus, self-actualization stuff. And Ed, who works at the butcher shop and aspires to buy the butcher, and is already an understanding that he is going to buy the butcher shop from the current owner once he retires. So he gets home from work and they're having dinner, and she's talking about this, the self-actualization in my classes and stuff. And he's like, huh? And he's kind of lost, not really understanding what the hell she's talking about. Because she wants to go to some seminar out of state or whatever, and it's going to cost some money. And she's trying to coax him into understanding what it's about, and he really doesn't get it. And frankly, I don't either. It's like, what the hell is this self-actualization? I think it's like her way, like a lot of gurus back then, they prey on people who are lonely and miserable with their lives and try and, find your chi. Kind of like Nikki would say, you have to find your chi, right? Where sure, it's like she feels she has to self-actualize to be satisfied, but she still has dreams of moving out west, as we'll find out when they hear a crash in the garage. And Ed goes to investigate. He sees that there's a hole in the windshield. There's blood running down the car. She says, I hit a deer. He's like, I guess insurance will take care of it. Then he hears noise in the back, and she keeps making up excuses for why they should go back in and sit down. And it's like, the jig's up. But he goes back to look, and he sees Rye like trying to punch on the back door, trying to get out. And he's like, there's a man back here. And then Rye just totally freaks out and just charges him and attacks, and Ed kills him in self-defense.
Wouldn't you? Wouldn't you?
But here's the funny thing. To get out of this, like what they're going to do, he's like, I thought you said it was a deer. And she's like, he's like, what? We can run away to California. I'm like, what the hell is this lady? She's just, total nutcase. And
it's not like, the thing is that it's not, I don't think it's a matter of nutcase. I think it's a matter of naivete, or even just steely resolve. I'm not sure yet. We're only 2 episodes in, so I don't know what's going on with Peggy. But at this point, I like Nikki better than Peggy.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Which is it's difficult for me because I love Kirsten Dunst. I think she's amazing.
Well, so he asked her straight, like point blank, why didn't you go to the hospital or call the police? And she just kind of dodges the question. And it's like, yeah, that is the $1 million question. But realizing that she didn't do it and it's too late and she would go to jail, he decides to clean up the mess. Yeah. Meanwhile,
he's a butcher, by the way. Ed is a butcher.
He is a butcher. Meanwhile,
so he knows how to clean up blood.
Yes. Meanwhile, Rye is missing, and the Gerhards don't know where he is, and they can't find him. And Mike Milligan and the Kitchen Brothers show up, and they go inside to talk to Floyd, who's temporarily taken over the family. Meanwhile, Dodd and Hansi are out in the barn torturing and interrogating some guy, and he's talking to him, and he's like, hey, man, you hear what I'm saying? And he's going on, and Hansi's like,
cut off his ears.
He's like, cut off his ears. And he can see in there. He's like, he's like, wake him up. And he hits him. He's like, I think he's dead. It's like, okay. And then, the grandson comes in and he says, oh, Grandma wants us all inside. The guys are leaving now. So we see Mike and the Kitchen Brothers walk. This is a great shot where Mike is walking down the steps. The Kitchen Brothers are following, and Dodd is just walking up the stairs, just kind of giving him the eye because he just doesn't want to hear it.
Well, there is a certain level of racism that is sort of baked into this, based on the time period that it's portrayed. Like even like I love Ted Danson.
Yep.
Ted Danson anywhere. And when he does collect driver's licenses, identifications, what have you, when he returns them, even though Mike Milligan is obviously the point man for negotiation, he hands the licenses back to the white guy as opposed to giving them back to Mike. Mm-hmm. And there is an undercut. No. There is a sense of, for lack of a better term, institutional racism of the time, where a black man is not going to be your primary representative.
I agree with that assessment, but I don't think that's why he didn't give it to him. I think it's because he is smart enough to know that whatever happened at the Waffle Hut has something to do with the arrival of these guys, which in a way it does, because it's like we're losing money, we're hemorrhaging it, we got these people harassing us from Kansas City. It's like, come on. And so he thinks that, okay, I need to get these people to leave, because he thinks that they're responsible right now, even though they're not. And because Mike is clearly talking to him without literally saying it, like basically telling him, don't mess with me, in so many words. And so I think he's deliberately insulting him by giving it back, saying, look, I know what you're doing. I'm not falling for this shit. And it's like, here, he's like his way of saying F you when he gives the licenses back to the Kitchen brothers and tells them to get out of town, because Mike never questions it. And we're jumping ahead here, because after Mike and the Kitchen brothers left the Gerhardt residence with the offer to buy out the family, they've driven down the road, and Solverson seniors pulled them over.
None of this conversation is going to make sense unless you've watched the first 2 seasons of season 2.
So. Yeah, and so basically, Mike never asked him pointedly, why did you pull us over? At first he said, what seems to be the problem? But when Solverson doesn't answer him, he doesn't really revisit that either, because he's just assuming the same thing, institutional racism. I'm not going to bother questioning him on it. You're doing the whole sundown town thing, like, oh, you better get out of here, because he says, oh, if I see you here, if you're still here and haven't crossed the state lines, then I'm going to have you picked up and we're going to have another conversation. Which Solverson, it's because, again, he suspects that these people have something to do with the shootings at the Waffle Hut, and he senses that these guys are just trouble, whereas Mike is picking it up as, oh, you're just, an old crotchety racist who doesn't like that there's a black man running point in the back, who's being driven by 2 white people as opposed to him driving the white people, and you just don't like that about me. And so Mike's just giving him, like, yeah, I've been down this road, but like he has no patience for this shit, which is why he's just kind of sort of beating around the bush, but he also doesn't want to exacerbate things if he doesn't need to, because he's smart. So,
well, it was a roadblock. It wasn't necessarily a pullover.
Right. And so that's what's going on there. Meanwhile, the cops discover the massacre at the Waffle Hut, and we meet. Well, before I mention that, I should say that Dodd goes back inside the house because Floyd has called them all in, and she says, okay, here is the offer from Kansas City. They're going to buy us out, but they're going to buy the whole operation. We might make more money. We just report to them. And Dodd's like, no, it's war then, And he just assumes that because Otto is, because of the stroke, he can't speak for himself, that he's going to be taking over. And Floyd asks everybody to leave and makes Dodd sit down and listen to her, which he can't stand. And he starts patronizing her like, like he's listening. And she's like, look, I promise I will give you everything, but you need to let me handle this first. And she tells him about how her grandfather, how his grandfather had come from, or was it the Weimar Republic? It's like he came here with nothing. He built everything, and your father was just a small part of that, and you are now a small part of that. But if you let me handle this, you will then be in charge of everything. But
well, again, I am reminded of the tropes of the Coen brothers.
Yeah.
And it's like, damn it, Walter, not everything has to do with Vietnam. And so that's whenever anybody brings up a war, except for season 4, I'm okay with wars when they bring them up because it seems like much more a recent history.
Well, in this scenario, he's talking about war as in like a mob war. Like, oh, so it's war. There is a scene where they do bring up actual war, but Dodd's just, wanting to go and fight. And so he pretends to let his mom think that he's going to obey her. But then he goes in the hallway and talks to Hansi and he says, look, you and I are running point on this and you report to me and nobody else. He's like, got it. But Floyd wants Hansi to go find Rye first. And he says, okay. And so that's what's going on with the Gerhardts. Meanwhile, we get to meet Solverson Jr., Lou Solverson, who, as we know, was retired running the diner in season 1. He's married. His wife has cancer, and they have Molly's their daughter at the time, who's like, what, maybe 9 years old, maybe 10?
Oh, really? How? I thought Molly was like 5 or 6.
Okay, 5. So she's like 5 or 6. And there is a scene where Solverson and his dad are sitting outside, or his father-in-law are sitting outside, and it's his that's right, it's his father-in-law, isn't it? That's Ted right, it's Danson? Not Solverson. That's right. I've been using Solverson to describe Ted Danson, but that's not his name. That's Junior, so I can't remember.
No, I don't remember his name, but you're right. No, right. That's Solverson's wife's daddy.
Right, and they're sitting out on the front porch, and Solverson tells how he's troubled when he went into the Waffle Hut and saw the cook, who the father-in-law recognized as the guy who had the quarterback record or the touchdown record at the local high school.
Yep.
And he said, and he's bothered because Solverson can tell from the forensics at the scene that, the guy fell funny, and he's reminded of an incident in Vietnam. We find out he's a Vietnam veteran. And then his father-in-law tells a story about World War II and this German guy they found hanged. And so it's like, okay, they're both war veterans, but unlike his father-in-law, who intimates that he was able to move on with his life and everything, he says it seems like your guys in your generation took that war home with you. Because obviously the outcomes of those 2 wars were very different, and the lines were a lot grayer and stuff. And so that's kind of, again, another thing. They have got to acknowledge Vietnam, which they do with one of my other favorite characters of this season. Funny you brought up Walter from Big Lebowski, because we have Nick Offerman playing Carl, who's who's really big into that type of stuff. He doesn't shout and like as angrily as Walter does, and he's not a Vietnam veteran, but or he might be, but he's a lawyer. And he's talking about, how horrible it is that your wife has to have cancer. God damn it. And she, young and kids and all that type of stuff. And
the military-industrial complex.
He's trying to talk to this dope at the table about it. He doesn't understand any of it. And he's like, yeah, it's Ike's farewell address, the military-industrial complex, special interest corporation, blah, blah, blah. And then he's like, here, Lou knows about it. And Lou Solverson sits down and he's like, yeah, you know about Ike's speech. And Lou's like, you mean the military-industrial complex? And he's like, see? Carl's like, see, told you. So Carl's like one of those people. He's yes.
I do want to address, again, I've only seen the first 2 episodes, but Lemon Pie says Peggy is utterly selfish, and I get that. I saw that, and I was like, how am I supposed to empathize with Peggy? And then Ed showed up, and it was like, I will do anything for you.
Well, I think that's the idea. I think they want you to empathize with Ed more than Peggy.
Yeah. But that's why. I don't know what's going to happen. I haven't seen the season before. Maybe Peggy dies. Maybe Ed dies. I don't know. But like what I'm saying is that Peggy is utterly selfish. I think that she is self-serving. I don't know if she loves Ed. I don't know yet. But I am looking forward to finding out about that relationship. And so I am captivated by the beginning of these characters and the story that is being presented. So,
right.
Like, when it comes down to it, yeah, no, it's Kirsten Dunst. So I would very much like to go to a drive-in movie with her as long as it was consensual.
Right, because she goes to when she works at the hairdresser place. She was talking to her
Yes.
coworker and friend about how, oh, I'm not sure about the.
Oh my God, Peggy stole all the teepee.
Yeah, what your coworker's fine with. She's like, yeah, maybe you should just say so next time or whatever.
Yeah.
But she's like, oh, you're worried you're not thinking of going because of your husband doesn't want you to. He's like, that sounds like you not doing something for you, and it sounds like you're at home locked up in the tower. Who's locked up in towers? And Peggy's like, dragons.
Dragons?
Like, no, princesses. So she's putting these ideas in her head that she needs to.
If you want to do multi-level marketing, you can get the key to the castle.
Yeah, exactly. And so and she brings her coworker back home with her because she needed a ride or whatever, and she sees the car by happenstance. And she's like, oh, what happened? Oh, and Peggy's like, it wasn't me, it was Ed. He hit a tree, just had a few too much to drink last night. And then she notices that Peggy has a bruise because when Ed killed Rye Gerhardt, he was so frozen and like just the total freeze response to it that Peggy had touched him on the shoulder and he accidentally recoiled and hit her accidentally and it left a bruise. And so she's like, so when Peggy tries to explain that, oh, it was just from the car accident, she's like, but you just told me that you weren't in the car. It was just Ed. And then Peggy's like, and her friend gets the wrong idea, thinking that Ed might have hit her or there might be some type of abuse going on. And so she's like, oh, you don't have to tell me anything, just, whatever. And, oh, but I'm here for you type of thing. And just remember, you have to do things for you sometimes. It's not always about your husband. And then she leaves, not realizing that Peggy is a bit delusional. So that's really not a good idea to tell her these things. What is it?
I apologize for my pause, but it is something where, okay, so when it comes to Fargo, there are several things that have to take place. Law enforcement. I've said this since the beginning. We need cops. Good-hearted law enforcement. And I think we have that here. Also, we need crime. Like criminal endeavors. I don't want to say families, but in this particular instance, and many of the instances that we've seen so far, criminal families, and we need the supernatural murder people. Now, I haven't seen the supernatural murder people, although Bokeem Woodbine as Mike Milligan is like our de facto Lorne Malvo at this point in the first two episodes, which is hard to accept because I saw season 4 first, and so I broke it. But it makes things difficult for me to associate. Like when we have Varga versus Malvo, I can see those two guys as being comparable. I can even give John Hamm. Well, no, not John Hamm.
Ole Munk.
Ole Munk. Like, that is what I can see. And so I don't have, like, Mike Milligan is not my Malvo Munk. And so I don't know. Are we going to get, and I suppose I'll find out. This is very interesting to me, simply because I've been watching this, I've been reading this book out of sequence. I've been watching these shows out of time. And so I do think that it's a anthology. And so I don't know if I'm actually getting the response that the show wants because I've been watching it wrong. Like, I'm watching this season 1, or sorry, pardon me, season 2. I'm looking at it and I'm comparing it, especially with the stroke of the Gerhardt and what's going on with the Gerhardts. I'm comparing it to season 5. I'm even seeing shadows of season 4. Like, in terms of the way that these people are interacting with one another and with the rest of society, I feel like my brain is a paint can in a shaker.
Okay.
And the point, I hear you ask, is this, well, what is the point? Is this going to resolve, or is this going to be me looking around and saying, we're doing this all for just a little bit of money?
Well, I mean,
It's a beautiful day.
Well, I mean, the seasons each have their own resolutions to it.
Well, no, I think you misunderstand, because I'm not disappointed. I'm not saying, like, is this pointless? I think that this is engaging storytelling. I'm just looking at it and being like, I wish I had seen this in order.
Well, I think you're asking the right response, though, because, like I mentioned, the show is clearly positioning this setup. Like the beginning of the second episode, it's the morning after his wife sprung this on him, and he's just sitting outside in a chair, just completely lost as to what to do. And you just feel so bad for Ed because he's now stuck because on the one hand, it's like, yeah, he could tell the truth and his wife will be the one that gets in trouble, but on the other hand, he doesn't really want that to happen because he likes this little life that they have. And she, meanwhile, is living in La La Land thinking, oh, self-actualization in California and all this type of stuff, because she's like, that's why I think she probably married him. She got caught up in the whole fantasy element of marriage and that type of thing, but didn't necessarily, think it through because she's, for whatever reason, is preoccupied with ideas of California and self-actualization while working at that beauty parlor in town. But the show, therefore, is clearly putting you on Ed's side and wanting you to feel for him. Meanwhile, you can see how the Gerhardts have their own inner turmoil with the divisions in the family already, and how this is going to cause problems with the corporate side of, Kansas City. Whereas Mike Milligan is just, on the road, likes being, and I think it's also some of the reasons Mike has been shown to be behaving the way he is because he's used to that, that swap between the sons, between the families. He's used to being pushed around, and that's why he doesn't really have any patience for this type of crap. Like after the cop, Lou's father-in-law pulls him over and tells him basically to get out of town, like a sundown town type thing. He goes to town to find the guy at the typewriter shop or whatever who had been associating with Rye. And he says, "Okay, where's Rye?" And the guy tries to give him the runaround, so he sticks his tie in the presser, starts rambling it up like he's gonna get the guy, and then he comes clean and says, "Oh, Rye was gonna talk to a judge about him freezing a can or whatever." And of course, Mike starts laughing because he's already heard about the massacre at the Waffle Hut, and he knows that the judge is a victim and the judge is dead, and this dope didn't know that. And he's like, "What? What's wrong?" And Mike just starts laughing as he's leaving. And so Mike has essentially already solved the mystery of the Waffle Hut crime. He knows that Rye Gerhardt had something to do with it, but he doesn't know where Rye is. But He has decided that they have to get Rye to use as a bargaining chip against the Gerhardts. And so that's what Mike is going off to do. And meanwhile, Lou and his father-in-law are trying to figure out if the judge was the intended victim or she just happened to be there. They're kind of clueless as to who did what. And when he brings Molly and his wife to the crime scene, they find the gun that had been up to that point missing. And the wife is smart enough to pick it up by the barrel. And so he takes the gun to book it into evidence as he sees Mike Milligan driving by. And so we're going to see if that goes anywhere, where that investigation leads. Where's Rye? But Ed, meanwhile, has to do the unsavory job of disposing of the body. And he chooses to do this by going down to the butcher shop.
Makes sense.
Waits till closing. He goes in the back. He chops up the body into pieces and starts putting it through the meat grinder. But what he did not expect was that Lou Solverson was going to show up, even though...
Okay, hang on.
Yeah.
Don't you think that it is absolutely glorious that the meat grinder is sort of the supplant, like it is the correlative of the wood chipper?
Yeah.
Like it is very Fargo.
Yeah.
Well, I got to get rid of a body. I'm a butcher. I know where to get a meat grinder. Mm-hmm. All right. And the dead, like the way that Ed numbs himself to something that his wife has like roped him into, but he loves her because she's pretty, essentially. And like I think that this is a very Fargo
he's simple
theme. I
don't think it's simply that she's pretty. Ed, from the moment I first saw the first 2 episodes, I thought Ed had a heart of gold, like a really nice guy.
Until he started grinding people.
Yeah, but he didn't. But it's not like he's killing a living person doing that. It's like Rye attacked him.
He fucking murdered that guy.
Well, he defended himself against Rye, who was trying to stab him with a knife, and so he justifiably killed him. And he didn't call the cops because he wanted to protect his wife, and that's why he figures, I'm going to take him to the butcher shop because he's already dead, and nobody seems to be looking for. And he doesn't even know who the guy is yet. Like Peggy and Ed don't know that this is Rye Gerhardt from a prominent crime family.
Oh, you're being very, very forgiving.
No, but Ed. Well, I mean, think about it. If Ed had gone to the police and they told the truth, then Peggy's going to go to jail a bit longer because, in a sense, it's still a hit and run. You hit the guy. It's like, yeah, you didn't kill him, but you didn't call the cops. You didn't go to the hospital. You just drove home and just left him in the garage. There was a real case like this, actually. Somebody hit a guy like this, and he did, in fact, drive home and parked his car inside because he didn't want to... he had committed a different crime, turns out. He was racing home. He hit a guy. He couldn't report it because he was trying to establish an alibi and get home in time. So he just, with this guy stuck in his windshield, this guy parked his car inside the garage. And the problem was he figured the guy's dead, so it's all covered. It's not going to be a big deal. Turns out the guy was still alive. And their coroner, when they found this out, because he didn't cover it up well enough, they were able to prove that he had lived for several hours afterwards, and if he had just driven him to the hospital, the guy would have lived. And instead, this is a weird case, but I've read about things like that before. But she's basically done this because she's delusional, clearly. She's left it all on Ed to clean up. Ed loves her, and he doesn't want her to go. He doesn't want her to go to prison, and so he decides to. And he killed Ryan in self-defense. That's a justifiable homicide. Is it weird that he's going to the butcher shop? Yes, but he did it because he loves his wife. He doesn't want her to go to jail.
Right.
Now, granted,
but he is simple. Because if he thought about it, he would find out that grinding human body parts into, Yeah, that's going to get you in trouble.
But it's also the other entendre that it's, like the old meat, back to the meat grinder, back to the, day-to-day thing. And he uses something that is day-to-day simple for him to solve the problem. And yet when he's chopping the fingers, Lou knocks on the door, and one of the fingers flies under the butcher from the kitchen.
Yeah, I'm waiting.
And Lou saw the light on, which is why he was coming there, even though it was closed. He's like, Molly likes to have bacon in the morning, and I thought I'd just come by, even though you're closed. And Ed's like, yeah, and he invites him in, and he gets him the bacon, and he almost, because he drops some of the change, he almost ends up finding the finger, and Ed manages to stop that from happening.
I like Nikki better than Peggy. I think Nikki was more collaboratively problem solving as opposed to Peggy being, oh, I'm an idiot. Do you want to help? And then
that's the point.
Well, I understand. Yeah, that's true. It is the point. That is the story.
They can't have it be the same character every time. You have to have different types.
I know.
So
I'm just wrapping my head around it.
Yeah, and to give a better idea of just how nice and simple and on the level the people at the butcher shop are, when this guy failed to come and pick up his order, the owner gave this whole huge stick of meat to Ed and says, oh, you can take it home. There's nothing worse than letting meat go to spoil. That should be a crime if it isn't already, he says. And so, Ed takes it home. And so Ed is just a very simple guy who's got the whole life planned out for him, cradle to the grave, no sense of adventure, anything. And Peggy seems to have married. I wouldn't be surprised if she probably just met him and went to prom for the sake of, oh, we're going to the prom. And it's, the whole fantasy element, and just, was young and stupid and got married because she was, again, caught up in the fantasy of it. And now that the reality of being a boring old housewife is set in, she doesn't want to be the boring old housewife who just has this boring job at the hair salon. She wants to, she thinks that she moves away, she'll have all this great adventure and all this type of stuff. And it's like, well, that's not the life you married into. You're living here in Laverne, Minnesota, and you're working at a local hair salon, and you're married to a guy who's already set to buy the butcher shop. This is his plan. This is his 401k, his retirement. And this is what you signed up for. And you can tell that she is there because it's almost like she's trying to live the whole life that you find in the Sears and Roebuck catalog rather than something she necessarily generally wanted to do. It's like, you probably would have been better off not getting married and just moving to California and trying to follow your dreams or whatever. And instead,
well, and they establish in the first episode, I think, and it's like, I want to have a baby, and Peggy is like, oh, we tried to have a baby last week. And then Ed is like, oh, it was 2 weeks ago, but I think we could try again. Like, she's not even, I don't even know what her
that's why I think
motivation is. And this is something, like, when we were watching with Nikki and Ray. Yeah. And, like, I was like, oh, does Nikki even love Ray? And then as we went through the show, I was like, yes, Nikki loved Ray. And in this, I'm just like, oh, no, Peggy is not a fan of Ed.
Well, it's a role reversal. Whereas
it is. Because
in season 3, it's Nikki doing something. Ray was the one, the husband, or not the husband, but the boyfriend did something really stupid by hiring one of his dumb parolees to do something for him. She's the one who cleaned up the mess with the AC thing.
Oh yeah,
prevented it from spiraling. Whereas in this, it's the other way around, where the wife is the one who does the really stupid thing, where she basically, in a sense, commits a hit and run, because even though she took the guy home with him, and he is now trying to cover it up in a way that would be preventing her from going to jail. But I think,
hey, hon, killed a man.
Right. But then I think that's why I think her motivation is already clearly laid out. Like I said, she was caught up probably in the whole fantasy of going to prom, getting married. And the reason she doesn't want to have a kid is because that's just another ball and chain, so to speak, that she's going to be stuck here. And she's realized now that the fantasy's over, the honeymoon phase is over, and it's like, oh God, what did I sign up for? And she just seems to have this delusion that, the self-actualization, self-help gurus and going to California will solve everything. And it's like,
she doesn't want to get fat.
she doesn't. Like the scene when we see that when Ed burns all the clothes and even the clothes he was wearing in the fireplace, and he's just
the belt buckle that's gonna come back.
Yeah, and he's just standing there with, his socks and his underwear on, and eventually he throws his underwear, and he's just kind of they literally have a painting of a cow above the fireplace. Like, you can't get more plain and simple than Ed Blomkist and the life that he wants, whereas she's just on a completely different plane of existence. And so it would be fascinating to see a prequel to this, because on one hand, I get why Peggy married into this initially, but I want to see what Ed was thinking at the time, because you would think he seems like a very kind and gentle person who wouldn't just say, "Oh, you're hot, I'm going to marry you." It seems like he actually cares. He clearly does. So I'm fascinated at how he got involved in this relationship long term. But yeah,
well, you've seen this. You've seen this season.
I have.
And so it's not something that we ever get. It's just something that we get to surmise.
Yeah, I'm not saying everything that I know, because I don't want to. But any type
Thank you.
spoilers. But that's what's going on in the Blomquist household. So Mike is on the hunt for Rye, and Dodd is going to be running his own scam, and we don't know what that's going to be yet.
Well, the power struggle between Floyd and Dodd.
Right.
That interesting dynamic.
Yes, and I love the casting of Gene Smart in this role as Floyd. And that's another funny thing, is that, why you named Floyd? Well, because my father, he wanted a son. Instead, he got a daughter, so he named me Floyd and raised me to be, like, in a sense, like a man. And she's, wearing the pants around the house, so to speak. And so, and you get to see that she's like totally, all there for it. And so that's interesting. So we have an actual family. It's like, yeah, it's a crime family, but not a crime family in the way that the season 4 stuff was. Like, yeah, they're involved in crime, but they are a family.
No, like season 5.
Well, I mean,
it's very much Roy Tillman.
Well, Dodd Gerhard is very much that way. I got the sense that Otto respects his wife more than Dodd respects his mother.
All right.
But and that's another thing that funny thing you bring that up when you mentioned the scene where Mike's like, the world's going to hell, but at least two men can still talk and be reasonable. And so this is, in a sense, the more dramatic version of addressing the world going to hell, whereas season 5 was the more, comical, absurdist way of addressing current events and how the world is going to hell in a handbasket because of stupidity and people like Dodd and Peggy, the Dodds and Peggies of the world. And so it's interesting to see how, like, who is going to emerge from this ensemble to be necessarily our heroes or our villains, may not be necessarily who we think, and how it'll be a fun season to watch. I
was surprised to see Kieran Culkin
die. It was kind of a one-off. He just kind of showed everybody I remember reading the initial reviews after seeing the episodes for the first time, and they're like, "What did you think about being called to do this?" And he's like, "Well, it's not like I was a huge mainstream actor to begin with, but he says, I saw the first season, I loved it, and he says, I read these scripts and they were great, and I says, I just wanted to be a part of this." And the way the director or Noah Hawley pitched it to him is that, "Oh, you're Culkin, people are going to think you're going to be around for a while," and then instead he's not. And I actually liked his character. I thought he was, he's an idiot, but I thought he was funny. I thought he would have been funny to be around longer, but then, what do you know, he's already out of the show.
Well, he was like Daniel Schulberg. I thought he was going to be a Schulberg.
Dan, remind me.
Oh, come on. I don't know names at all. The guy who who got poisoned and then he was like never better in the last.
I see. Oh, like Psy.
I thought he was going to be like Psy. He was going to be like the hapless bullshit guy who showed up from time to time. And then he's dead. And I'm like, okay. Like, not yay, but like, all right, this is fucking rad. Like, never hold on to your darlings in this show. That's what I like about it. People go.
Yeah.
Oh, no, people are dying. That's what people do.
Yeah, and then other surprising casting choices like Brad Garrett as the representative from the Fargo crime syndicate.
Can't wait to see more.
Yeah, and then Adam Arkin is just Adam Arkin for the leader of the syndicate. Okay.
Adam Arkin passed away, didn't he?
No, his father, Alan.
Oh.
They very much look alike, though. Father.
Both good actors.
Yeah, they are. But yeah, so there's good casting in this, and then we've already met my second favorite character of the entire Fargo mythos in these 2 episodes. And you can be left to figure out who that is, as we'll see as the season unfolds.
Okay.
And then even the actor Jeffrey Donovan as Dodd, I thought that was good casting. I mean, yeah, he's
Burn Notice. You want to give big ups to Burn Notice?
I never seen that.
Yeah, no one has.
I see him more in bit roles, character roles every once in a while here or there. But I thought, okay, I liked him in this. And of course, this is just the and then you have Zahn McClarnon as Ohanzi. I'm a fan of his. He's really cool.
Oh yeah.
I think that about covers it. So when comparing it to the beginning of season 4, it's like already I like that the ensemble is small. My guess there's a lot of characters, but you could tell that only a few of them were highlighted necessarily, and they're only focusing on certain characters as they need to. Like I alluded to, certain characters may emerge from the background and become important later, whereas in season 4 they're trying to make everybody the front and center right off the bat.
Sure.
And I'm already more interested because we have a corporate entity fighting an actual family, so at least it's a different dynamic rather than 2 families fighting each other. But you could tell that that's not going to be the main drive, because you also have Peggy and Ed as separate from the whole crime family bullshit, or the whole mob war bullshit. And then you have the stuff going on with the fact that Molly's mother has cancer and having to deal with that, which adds a whole other dimension.
Oh my God, we didn't even get to Stella and Molly.
Right.
I think that is also, again, I think that this is a matter of them building on the first season. And Molly's mom is How I Met Your Mother. That is the mother from How I Met Your Mother, which I thought was hilarious. And moving forward with that, the home life of the Sulversons. That's it. I think that is really touching in the way that they interact together, and Molly being there. It contracts the world, but also expands the world. Mm-hmm. It's a strange. I enjoy it. It is. And this is why I enjoy the sort of anthology nature of Fargo, is that each book builds upon the previous and may inform the further.
Yeah.
And that's where I am. I'm just picking books out of a shelf in no particular order. That's why we did this entire review in the way that we did it. Let's go 1. Let's go 5. Let's go 4, 3, 2.
Well, even Noah Hawley joked about that. He said he perceives the series as a bunch of chapters in a book about the history of true crime and about fictional true crime in the Midwest. And it's and I'll just say for the hell of it, Nick Offerman's character Carl is my favorite Nick Offerman character, and I think there's a scene in this season which is the best scene I've ever seen Nick Offerman in anything. And you'll know.
No spoilers. No spoilers.
I won't spoil it. You will know it when you see it.
No, you'll tell me when I see it, lady.
But I think this was off to a really good start. Whereas season 1 is more the season. Obviously, it was juxtaposed against originally from when it originally aired, and so it's where season 1 you had these 3 very strong co-protagonists and antagonists in a way, where you had Lester, Malvo, and Molly. Whereas this, it's they're going in the total different direction by having a large ensemble, but each character kind of represents, Ed represents small town, average, simpleton America. Peggy with the whole actualization, feminism, all that kind of stuff. You have Mike Milligan, and then you have the corporate. All this different representations that we were talking about earlier in the season or earlier in the show tonight. Hey, Hurt. And so, yeah, it'll be fun to see how this story unfolds.
Well, I'm out of steam.
Yeah, I'm out of things to say for the first 2 episodes.
So I just want to say, well, no, I like things. First things first, Kat, thank you so much. This is amazing being able to talk about this show because I never would have gotten into this if it hadn't been for our mutual admiration for the Coen brothers and murder. But no, this is so much fun, and I appreciate you putting up with my shenanigans and hanging out.
It's always fun, even when it's maddening. It's still fun.
I should put that on my business card. It's always fun, even when it's maddening. Thank you, Lemon, so much for being here. Thank you, Tim's Talk. Suzanne Eckstein, you are in my top 45 people that I enjoy. That's not a compliment. I don't know why I went with 45. What if I went with 15? Is that better? I doubt it, because I already said 45. So, but thank you for being here, Suzanne. And always, Herc, thank you, Flyboy. We're going to be back next week for episodes 3 and 4 of season 2. And can oh my stars, is it okay if I leave?
Oh, you betcha, yeah.